This is Jimmy Friday, and I'm here with some weekly encouragement. This week's topic is called Transparent, and it's inspired off Proverbs chapter 27, verse 19. Let me go to the scripture. It is your own face that you see reflected in the water, and it is your own self that you see in your heart. This week's topic, is just, like I said, it's called Transparent. I get up here, weekly, try to bring you some kind of word of encouragement, whether it's for the day, for the week, or for a month, however long it lasts you, or, however you use it. I'm far from perfect. We all got our mistakes. You know what I mean? And so, I'm not, I wasn't brought from heaven here on earth to, like I'm perfect or something, you know what I mean? I came from the earth. I came from the dirt, the turf, you know what I mean? And I'm trying to get to the next best place, So when you see me stumble, you know what I mean? Just remember I ain't perfect, you know what I'm saying? So, just a little rundown of things in my life. I come from a single parent home, a dysfunctional home. As a youth, I used to watch my older brothers get into fights with each other, to the point where sometimes guns was drawn, and I've stood in between, the gun and one of my brothers, you know what I mean, just to kind of cease fire. You feel what I'm saying? So, seeing a lot of different things as a youth kind of made me grow up faster than I should have grown up. Just from, being touched by someone the wrong way as a child, you know what I mean, done some damage, being poor to where, we having to steal out the laundromat, just hoping the clothes that's in there has something for me or my siblings to wear, going to Walmart, swapping my shoes out so I can have some new shoes, you know what I mean, being introduced to smoking weed before I was 10 years old. I had a best friend that hung himself before he was 11. I was about 12 years old at the time. You know what I mean? That was kind of rough, to handle, and just living with multiple families from elementary to my adult stage, it kind of made me long to want to have my own, so at times I don't go out. I sit at home a lot because, it is times I flash back to when I was having to sleep on someone's couch, and wake up early in the morning, and leave the house, and stay gone all day, like work hours, so I'm not just sitting around someone's home. I actually would get up and leave, to make it seem as if I was going somewhere, but just really I was going to the hood, and hanging with the homies, you know what I mean, and trying to hustle. You know what I'm saying? Just in thinking of suicide at times, stealing from people, getting hooked on alcohol and different little drugs. I didn't go too far, because I felt like God had a chain on me, He wouldn't let me wander off too far. Going through a divorce, that has weighed on me as a man, not being able to complete the mission of, taking care of the household as the head. That kind of brought some little depression on me as well. Having to go to health clinics because I didn't have protected sex, you know what I mean, putting my trust in a female, not knowing, you know what I mean, and so, dealing with all that stuff growing up, it kind of make you a little rough around the edges, I'll say, you know what I mean. I'm not in that place of life now, you know what I mean, but reflecting back, it was a hell of a depression, I had to fight through to get to where I am today. You know what I mean? My heart is still kind of, it's kind of damaged in some areas, just because, from allowing others to hurt me and from allowing myself to hurt my own self. Like I put myself in positions I shouldn't have and that I knew better, but still choosing to go the other way, has brought damage. Like it say in Proverbs, what is it? Proverbs 4:23. Guard your heart, because out of it flows the well springs of life. So not protecting my heart as well. My trust issues are, is a little tangled. Like I said, just from others and myself. So when it comes to like relationships, I haven't been able to fully commit because I'm still healing from some damaged things in my life, and I understand that, and so that's kind of why I have issues certain times with relationships, because I'm still healing in that trust area. I still hit little rough patches in life as well, where I might want to drink something, you know what I'm saying, like I might want to put something in the air, that, but that's just me, going through those little valley phases in life. You know what I'm saying? You gotta, a weak person can only stay weak for so long, then it's time to rebuild and become strong, but you can only be strong for so long before you get weak at times, so it's a balance. You feel what I'm saying? Like I say though, the good, the righteous person falls many times, but we rise again, and so, like I said, I'm far from perfect. I didn't come from heaven and trying to live here on earth. I'm here from the earth, from the turf. You feel what I'm saying? And I'm trying to get to the next best place. You feel me? And so my faith, is real strong in Yeshua. You know what I mean? Just because at the times when I needed a role model, or something to look up to, his teachings and lessons saved me from self-destruction and saved me from being deceived any further by others. So, I cling tight to the scripture because during the times I was in my low phases in my life, them dark valleys, when nobody was there to help me or could understand, the word was there. Like I say, the word became flesh and dwelt among us. And that's what I really feel, that it dwelt among me and helped me, like them footprints in the sand, that footprints in the sand poem. You know what I mean? So I'm just opening up, being transparent because we need it out here. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people try to hide behind a mask. I was just having a talk with my brother Bougie, you know what I mean, Levi, just the other day about how we both came from the turf. We knew each other since we was little, you know what I'm saying? But today, just talking, FaceTiming with him, it make us, be more grateful, and look at how much grace we have because we both are going, in different lanes, but we both understand, that the Creator calls us when it's time for Him to call us, so we all do our own thing, but, speaking with my brother, just, it keeps me humble, and keeps me motivated, you feel what I'm saying, because it's others that's going through the walk with me, that's not saying nothing, but they just looking at me, as I'm looking at them, and we just marching ahead, you feel me? So that's what it's all about, is pushing each other on, so I'm reaching out to help, others that have traveled down this road, that still might be on the dark path, keep your head up, keep fighting. It's others out here that's been where you are, and that's where you are still, so, you're not alone. That's what I want to say, stories like mine and others out here in this world, it often get brought up because a lot of people, they just want information to gossip about because they want to win favor with another person, just for a short moment so their lives can look like it's perfect and good and a better place, so the stories don't get told because, it's used for more damage than it is to help us. So some people would rather not speak on it, what they've been through in life. They'd rather keep it bottled up, but me, I'm going to speak my truth, because we in this fight together, and somebody got to lead by example, and people can only talk about you once. You feel what I'm saying? So I can speak about my life, so whatever people would have to say about me, You know, I can tell you straight, you know, from me, from the horse's mouth, you know, and what's real. You know, other people would just talk and shoo because they don't really know the truth, you know, but I'm going to speak it. Like I say, you know, speak the truth and shame the devil. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, my thing is, you know, is my word to those that have been through things, you know, find you a positive outlet, you know, to help you overcome your situations. You know, so this is just me being transparent with you, you know, opening up, like I said, you know, like the scriptures say. I mean, you know, as water reflects your face, so your heart reflects who you are. You know, so that's, you know, all I have to say, you know, is let's continue to be transparent, you know, to build our relationships up better. You know what I mean? Like, and for those that don't get it, then let them keep on living their life how they want to, you know, but you stay real. Keep your head up. You know, that's all I have to say. I'm going to close with the scripture. It is your own face that you see reflecting in the water, and it is your own self that you see in your heart. So, you know, what do you see when you look at your reflection? What do you see in your heart? You know, that's where we need to deal with the issues and start with to rebuild. We need to start with the heart and handle those issues first before we can do anything else. So that'll wrap it up for this week. Y'all be cool. Keep your head up. Remember, let's go out there and try to be 1% better today than we were yesterday. Whatever it is that you got to change to make your 1%, do it. You know, keep reaching for them goals. Remember, life is a forward march. We learn from our past mistakes and we press on to the blessings that's in front of us. Y'all be cool.